So today we're going to be covering another one of Honglu's 10th E.G.Os, and that is going to be Roseate Desire. As I said before, Roseate Desire is a 10th level E.G.O, has a pretty solid roll of 19 base with plus 9 coin, attack weight of 3, and piercing damage. So 28 roll is pretty solid, honestly. And on hit you inflict 2 defense power down, and what that does is if the enemy is using a defense skill, whether that be, let's say, evade or block, or I believe it even works on counters. So they'll be losing 2 power for those, which could be good if you're going against Shock Centipede, and that's about all that comes to mind, to be honest. But on hit, inflict 5 defense level down, which is good. It just makes them a little bit softer, right? Nothing crazy, but it's nothing terrible either. Just like Ishmael's Roseate Desire, this Roseate Desire has a very solid passive, it being Binding Ribbons. The target of the leftmost skill on the dashboard is inflicted with Lust Absolute Resonance divided by 4 Lust Fragility next turn. Next turn, Lust Fragility is actually pretty good, and it's on Absolute Lust Resonance, which I would say is pretty reliable if you're using E.G.Os, because this E.G.O, Dawn's Lifetimes 2, and Gregor's Garden of Thorns all want Lust Resonance, or just Lust in general, which would make this actually a pretty good passive to be running in a Lust-focused team, I would have to say. Now, if you want to use this E.G.O, you're going to have to cough up 20 Sandy at a surprise to absolutely nobody, but 4 Lust resources and 2 Envy resources as well, which is not that expensive, but it's the same price as Rhyme Shank, so do with that what you want. The resistances of this E.G.O are going to become Fatal to Wrath, ineffective to Lust, because this E.G.O loves Lust, and Fatal to Pride. So, all in all, pretty bad, and pretty bad. The corrosion of this E.G.O changes your roll to a 30 with negative 15 coin, piercing damage, and attack weight of 3. So, it's not bad. It's not the greatest, but it's alright. Now, on hit, inflict 2 defense power down, which is the same as before. On hit, inflict 5 defense level down, which is the same as before again. And on hit, inflict 4 bind next turn. That 4 bind next turn is actually pretty useful, I suppose, but not worth corroding for, I would say. The roll isn't too much better. It's only 2 coin power above, and you're a 10th, so the likelihood of you losing that much sanity to roll tails is fairly low. So I'd have to say stick with your Awakening for this E.G.O. Unless we're talking about for the aesthetics of this E.G.O, because in the Awakening, it's good, right? I gotta say, I love the hot pink clashing with the dark clothing of the Sinners. It just works oddly well, and I really like how Honglu gets claws here. That's a very nice detail, and I like how he kind of gets corroding by the ribbons, right? Obviously, I like that quite a bit, but I like the corrosion too, right? More pink, bigger claws, right? It just makes everything that was good about this look even better. So, that's probably going to be like a solid 7. Nothing out of this world, but also pretty respectable. This E.G.O is actually fairly strong, boasting a 28 roll, which is not the best, right? But it's not the worst, not nearly the worst. The attack weight of 3 with the 28 roll is actually quite respectable, I'd say. But on hit effect, defense power down is, you wouldn't think it's that useful. But if you're fighting someone with an evade, then it would actually be pretty darn useful, I would say. I mean, only if they have multiple evades, because if you use this, you're going to break their first evade, and, well, that evade's dealt with. But if they have another one, then you're most likely going to be able to get a little bit of benefit from it. But, also, when you're on hit, 5 defense level down, it's going to make the enemy a bit weaker, which is always nice to have the enemy take a tiny bit more damage. So, that's pretty respectable. But, also, your passive is going to be inflicting Lust Fragility, which, if you're running a Lust team, and a lot of the Lust team is very strong, very damage dealing, especially Dawn's Lifetimes 2. So, if you get this going, and you get it good, then that's going to be doing a lot of damage. A lot. So, it doesn't do too much by itself, but is a very good setup E.G.O. Somewhat like Hexnail's Faust. So, I would have to put this at maybe like a 7.5 at a strength category. I'd say that's around pretty fair. and the usefulness of this E.G.O. Right? I honestly didn't think this E.G.O was anything special. I thought it was almost as bad as Soda Honglu. But now that I looked at it, and now that I actually thought about its usefulness, it can be used to weaken enemies, get them ready to be beaten, and just soften them up. And that is quite useful, honestly. So I gotta put it at a 7, right? I mean, 7 is probably pretty accurate. 6, high 6 maybe, but pretty much 7. So I'll put her at a 7. But that is about it for this E.G.O, right? Who doesn't like a bound up Honglu? I mean, some people, probably, but I would have to say this E.G.O is quite solid. I mean, you don't have any other tests to run on Honglu, other than the one that we shall not name. Well, I did name it a little earlier, but I digress. So, honestly, I would use this. It's pretty decent, right? You're gonna have to use a lot of Lust, but if you're running a Lust team, which you can be running with this E.G.O, right? You don't have to be running a Lust team, but you most likely would want to. And if you are, then you can fuel it pretty efficiently. And a Lust team, you would most likely have Liu Ishmael, which fuels the Envy. So, in that case, it's just fueled by a Lust team, which is pretty interesting. So, honestly, pretty good E.G.O, a little bit circumstantial, but all in all, pretty decent. So, I hope you have a good one.